Number two is the opposite problem of going to failure all the goddamn time. Most of the time you get very poor stimulus to fatigue ratio. Stimulus is great for 1 week, but the fatigue accumulates so much that you have to deload very often and you can't make as good of strength progressions. Your technique deteriorates. You start to hate training. All this other stuff happens. And you think, well, this is for a good reason. It's not for a good reason. Study after study show that in high volume conditions with advanced lifters, training to failure usually produces substandard results in long duration efforts. Put another way, failure training is best for people that don't train very often, don't train very hard, or are relatively beginner. And that's because they don't have to pay a huge fatigue cost. But once the fatigue is something you can really impose on yourself, failure training usually is not ideal if done over and over and over and over. And some people are so into the failure training that they can't recover from it, so they have to actually tune down their whole volume. So they might have done 12 sets for legs usually, 12 sets for quads per week. But because they want to go to failure, if they can't recover from 12 sets, they're saying, okay, I'm going to do 8 sets of quads, but I'm going to do them really hard. The problem is that 1, 2, or 3 reps in reserve compared to failure in direct testing, in comparisons literature, even when it's one person versus themselves, one arm versus the other, one leg versus the other, there's no, on an individual session or even on months of training, there doesn't seem to be a difference between those two. And there's a huge difference in fatigue from 3 reps in reserve to failure, but multiple 3 rep in reserve sets versus multiple failure sets seem to produce an almost unnoticeable difference in gains, maybe a tiny little difference. So if you're paying this massive fatigue cost, you're saying, okay, but that's okay.